In this episode,
If you're going to do a decent system, you've got to do it for your mum.
My wife would kill me if we'd started doing that.
I mean, anything's easy when you know how to do it and you're doing it daily.
But from a green point of view, they're actually better off exporting when the grid's dirty.
Your Tesla, for God's sake.
I regret my choices.
Heat pumps are where it's way behind.
You're my ideal customer, Mick.
hi and welcome to another episode of Homeowners Q&A. I'm your host Mars, and today we're exploring how to make the most of your home energy system during the summer. As the days get longer and the sun puts in overtime, many homeowners are generating more electricity than they know what to do with. So how do you maximize your self-consumption? Can smart controls truly help you get more out of your batteries and solar panels? We've assembled a fantastic panel to unpack this topic. We've got Ash Parker from Ag, Paul Arundale, Mick Wall from inverter.to, and Laurence Bradbury from Orium Energy. Welcome everybody. Before we get started, we'd like to thank Ag for sponsoring this episode. Ag is on a mission to crack clean energy because, let's face it, switching to solar, batteries or EV charging shouldn't feel like solving a riddle. With 10 years of making the hard stuff feel easy, they design, install and support homes and businesses across the UK, turning clean energy into a no-brainer. Their goal? A future where every ray of sunshine powers a simpler, smarter choice. So thank you, Ag, for helping us all switch to the sunny side stress-free. Let's crack clean energy together. Right, Laurence, you've been doing PV for quite some time now. What, in your opinion, is the biggest mistake that homeowners make with solar during the summer months?
Not installing enough. I was bound to say that, Miles, wasn't I?
No, I agree, Lawrence. I regret my choices sort of 6 years ago that I didn't put more on.
Do you know, actually, I've got a customer that we could have fit 21 panels on his roof and he decided to do 18, but like the cost of just putting the scaffolding up to retrofit 3 more panels, it's you know, like, do it once, do it properly. That's my advice.
If you're borderline and you need a DNO approval, do the DNO approval, get as much as you can. Yeah, I have big regrets.
Pretty much everything we do, Mick, is DNO. Like, I mean, in fact, I've automated the DNO process.
6 years ago, you were in 300 watt panels and you could be borderline 368, which I was, but yeah, I wish I'd have gone bigger. But anyway,
in all honesty, it's lazy installers. They don't want to do the DNO, so they oftentimes they'll missell 5 kilowatts of solar on a 3.68 inverter just because they don't want to do the DNO. It's a travesty, really.
That's a good thing for homeowners to sort of be aware of, that you need to request or find an installer that's willing to do that for you, that's willing to go that extra mile and do the paperwork that means you're going to get the best system. You don't want to be shortchanged.
If you go through the DNO approval process now when you're putting the solar in, if you then get a battery or if you do the battery at the same time, having that export capacity means you can take advantage of flexible tariffs and potentially things in the future like savings events and where the more you can put back in a short period, the more reward you get financially.
It's a good point, actually, Mick, because we also regret not putting more on. We put up 6 kilowatts in the end, and I really wish we'd put up more because we've got a big west-facing roof that we could have put an awful lot more panels on. And there's almost a false economy to actually doing it twice, because then you've got to get a bigger inverter at second time of asking. So, Ash, is this something that you guys kind of try and recommend to your customers in terms of they've got more roof space than they're actually projecting for? Do you try and push them to try and maybe maximize that roof?
I wouldn't necessarily say push down the direction. It's more having the conversation and advising them. If you're going through the G99 anyway, go for the kind of larger amount, and the worst case scenario is you have to then revert back and scale down a little bit. But first of all, you're definitely as well doing it. I'd say 95% of the projects we do at the minute are G99.
The trouble with trying to convince a homeowner to go big is that if they've not gone down the renewable sort of journey and they've not got heat pump and they've not got like a water cylinder or an EV, they can't see themselves using all that solar right now. I know when I got mine 6 years ago, we had nothing sort of big electric wise, and now we've got everything, and I just want more solar. And it's sort of, maybe they just can't see X years down the line when they're going to be a fully electrified house.
That's a very good point. The use leapfrogs. I mean, I think I'm using about 36 megawatts a year now. I finished the journey in 2001, 9 years after I started it. If you believe U-Switch, that's 12 3-bedroom semis.
Yeah, mine's a similar trajectory. we had barely anything electric, and I was exporting so much back to the grid at the beginning. And now with EVs and water cylinders and heat pump and induction cooker, and yeah, I need more.
You're my ideal customer, Mick.
We've teamed up with Egg, one of the UK's leading home energy providers, to give one lucky homeowner the chance to win a 6-panel solar installation worth £6,281. Perfect for a typical 3-bedroom house, this system can help you slash energy bills and cut your carbon footprint. The winner can also choose to upgrade by adding more panels or a battery, with flexible payment options available. This is your chance to future-proof your home, reduce grid reliance, and embrace cleaner, greener living, completely free thanks to Egg and Renewable Heating Hub. To enter, simply visit Renewable Heating Hub, link in the description. Terms and conditions apply. Don't miss out. Get your entry in now and start your solar journey sunny side up. Good luck. How big's your array, Laurence?
18 kilowatts peak. I've got another 6.75 ready to go on and 37 kilowatts of export permission. So I pretty much power my entire street. Not to mention full Powerwall 2s as well. So 54 kilowatts of storage.
Impressive export allowance. That's lucky.
37. I know. I just can't do it yet. I can't actually put 37 kilowatts out to the grid, but I'm working on it.
Makes my little 5.1 of panels on a 3.6 inverter pretty disappointing.
I started with 4, Mick. I just added a bit more and a bit more and a bit more.
It's a good point, Mick. Why is your inverter smaller than your peak kind of solar allowance?
It's because as Laurence alluded to earlier, the installer and myself took the decision not to go down the DNO approval route and stuck with the 3.6 kilowatt inverter because it was easier. And another thing, Northern Power Grid charge you for that request. So I know that some DNOs around the country do it for free, but they wanted something like 350 quid plus VAT to begin the process of finding out what the limit is on our substation.
I think that was always the way, believe it or not, because we've always done G99s, even, from inception. And I think they stopped charging. Most of them stopped charging quite a long time ago.
Apart from Northern Power Grid. So that was one of the reasons. And because we were only putting 5.1 of panels on a 3.68 inverter, and we had different aspects, and they wouldn't always be in sun at the same time. The assumption was we were going to only get to the limit of the inverter most of the time. But reality is that there's quite a lot of times we do get a lot of clipping. We're only probably missing out on a couple hundred watts.
So we were in a similar situation. We put up 6.16 kilowatts worth of panels, and the installers put in a 5 kilowatt inverter, which really surprised me because our panels are fully south-facing. We've got no shading whatsoever. So we basically sent them a very polite email. They were like, no, it's fine. We say, well, we're kind of losing out on potentially a 4 kilowatt. And they eventually succumbed and came and replaced the inverter with a 6 kilowatts. Is that common, Ash, that you guys would potentially downsize the inverter, even though it's smaller than kind of the full potential of that array?
I think giving the customers the full kind of scope, full visuals of what each system could do for them, showing them from a perspective of a slightly smaller inverter, but also it's an educational piece. I think someone like yourself has a bit more knowledge, has then come back at your installer being strong, got what you wanted in the end. So in terms of the good of a podcast like this can do, giving the customers the knowledge that they need to make the best decision for them.
Paul, what is the best strategy? So you've got a reasonably sized solar PV system. Is it better to just export as much as you can, or is it better to just self-consume as much as you can?
Depends on the tariff. Is the answer. Our systems evolve over the years, and when it first went in, we didn't get paid much to export, and we didn't have a battery. So the answer was to use as much, self-consume as much. And me being me, did that with a geeky way and automated a lot of stuff. The classic famous solar dishwasher that you tell Siri to activate, to arm the solar dishwasher, and when the solar starts exporting beyond what the dishwasher would consume, the dishwasher kicked in. And it worked great. But as you add a battery, you actually simplify it, and you can use more of your own power if you've got a battery without having to think about it. You don't need to automate everything anymore because the battery does it automatically. But now we've got Octopus Intelligent, we've got the 15p export rate. It actually makes more sense to charge the battery overnight on cheap power and export as much as possible. It's almost to the point where we still do overnight washing and heavy loads, hot water cycles. As much as possible happens at the cheap rate so that we can then export more when the solar is available the following day. Ultimately, it saves money. We put a solar age system, 6 kilowatt solar age system in at the beginning. We were part of a OVO vehicle to grid trial with Nissan Leaf and part of the BAYES plan, or BAYES research plan for investigation of the plausibility of vehicle to grid, and it worked really well. But part of that, we had a fixed export tariff, which was mind-bogglingly really good. It was effectively to cover the running costs of the vehicle to grid. But what they did as part of that is they paid you a really high export rate for all of your exports, including solar. So actually, we put solar on and basically paid for it in 2 years. Not everyone gets that, obviously. We came off that trial and we were just same as everybody else using normal tariffs, and decided to put Solar Age Energy Bank, their DC battery, because it was easy to fit. It integrated with the system really well. It meant I could use all the automation software I've got, which is a big difference. That's how we've managed to save so much in terms of running costs, is being able to control those systems. But so yeah, the battery has been a key part of that. It just makes doing it all much easier. You don't have to think about it as much.
I do exactly the same as Paul. I'm luckily enough, because you've got an EV, you get access to better overnight tariffs. So build the batteries, export all day. The question is, what's best? Really depends on what kit you've got, what tariffs you're able to get access to because of that kit. Are you pre-feeding tariff? Are you still on feeding tariff, or you're on actual exports? Because those people that are lucky enough to be on the old feeding tariff are getting paid for exports regardless of how much they use or not.
Yeah, we're on the old feed-in tariff.
You'll get the deemed 50%, so you'll get paid something around 5p per kilowatt hour for 50% of what you generate. And you could still use 100%. You could self-consume all of that and still get paid 50p. So you're in a great position.
Yeah, don't mess with that, Mars.
Well, to be fair, I did, because I wanted to trial the actual exports, as you've done, Paul. I moved my feed-in tariff export to actual export.
So you're deemed export to actual export.
Yeah. So your feed-in tariff payments are in two parts. There's the generation part, which you will always get for the rest of your contract, which is 20 years, 25 years. You can move the export part from deemed to actual if you wish. You can even move back.
So the deemed export, I think, Mick, I'm going to say that a lot of people think the way that you've just described, oh, I'm getting paid for it regardless. When I did the sums, I was getting paid £128 a year for my deemed export. When it actually worked out what I was exporting, it was worth 900 quid a year, and that was at about probably 10 pence a kilowatt. That was before we were getting 15 pence a kilowatt. I think now my export's worth about £3.5 grand a year, something like that.
Wow. I think it depends. If you've got a big system and you've got a lot to export back to the grid, then doing a quick Excel spreadsheet is going to show that 15p as it stands is the best option. But if you're a very low exporter, actual exporter, you'd be better off sticking on your deemed fit. And we've got to remember that the 15p, I don't think is going to be around very long.
No, I think the bubble's going to burst.
Yeah. So do not buy a solar system, or do not make big plans, big outlay, financial outlay, thinking you're going to get 15p for the next 20 years. That's definitely, I think that's a definitely smart piece of advice.
I think the same might be true for things like Intelligent, where you get the impromptu slots with the cheap slots during the day, because I don't think it really matches what the true demand curve of the grid is.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. It's great. It's done brilliant for us, but I don't think it'll be around forever.
No, I think the future of solar export is going to match the curve of like agile import. So whereas you've got a low amount in the afternoon when everyone's generating, there's low demand, but then that 4 till 7 p.m. peak, I think that'll be when they want your export, and they'll be willing to pay for that export. So having batteries and having some way of storing the energy for your own usage and then being able to export is probably the future.
I agree, but I wouldn't say goodbye to the 15p because I think as time goes on, energy is going to keep rising. So 15p might be the baseline, might stay that 15p for the next 20 years, in which case it'll be worth next to nothing in 20 years' time.
Are you thinking about getting a heat pump? Then don't get caught out by a bad installation. Bodge Buster is your essential guide to asking the right questions and spotting red flags before it's too late. Written from real homeowner experience, this book gives you the knowledge to avoid costly mistakes and make informed decisions. Get Bodge Buster today in print or for Kindle, link in the description.
Having smart kit is a big win as well. Having kit that's going to be able to sort of adjust to these demands. Because at the moment, myself and Paul are doing exactly the same thing with our kit, but it only takes the export tariff to drop and something else, another tariff to come in. Then you have to be able to adapt, and hopefully the technology you've purchased is going to be able to adjust with the tariffs. Maybe Ash can chime in about when you're telling customers about buying battery systems and inverters to get the smarter ones that have got that capability moving forward, rather than having a bit of a dumb, cheaper battery that doesn't do this stuff.
Don't even know who would still be selling them or flogging them to customers. I think everything that we're doing eggs all around about sustaining kind of your bills now, protecting your bills now, and also well into the future. We know that one of the biggest wins for customers is having the ability to go on the time of use tariffs where you can buy it in the evening time. So it's definitely something that's advised.
There's a wide variety, and you've got your high end stuff like your Give and maybe your My Energy and your Power Walls and stuff that can seamlessly hook into tariffs. But then I know you've got some of your lower end stuff that's basically just charged between midnight and 4 o'clock, and it's all rigid and set up in time blocks, which is not going to be helpful for the consumer moving forward.
I might be slightly biased in my sort of my take on it all, but for me, it's not so much how much built-in cleverness each of these devices have, it's how controllable they are locally. If in the future we have such a complex house with EVs, heat pumps, batteries and solar, is the ability to add something else in the future that might not necessarily exist as a consumer product now, that's something that can then connect up to all those individual components and make them work properly. I mean, I use Home Assistant, but that's hundreds and hundreds of hours of geekiness and messing about, which most people don't want to do. But in the future, if you can replicate something similar easy out the box that links to your heat pump, your solar and your EV charger and does all that for you, but does it to signals from the grid or signals from your energy supplier to maximize your financial benefits as well as maybe carbon benefits, if that's your motivation. That's how I see it. And having things that are very closed shop is not good from that point of view.
Well, I think the advice is the same, and your Powerwall, you Give Energy, they've got APIs and they've got connectivity. So when you're thinking about making a battery or inverter or anything smart, make sure you go for something that's open and can be connected to allow these decisions to be made on how much solar is it going to be tomorrow, how cold is it going to be, and tracking your usage and making smart decisions all around this AI piece in it.
Solar and battery, I think the current stuff is pretty much there. The heat pumps are where it's way behind. The ability to integrate them and to actually do anything useful with them is really tricky. And unless you're willing to go DIY, and like I have, most of them out the box don't do it. And that's where they need to change massively in the next few years.
So what have you done, Paul? What have you done to make kind of try and improve the interoperability of a heat pump and the rest of the smart stuff around your house?
Well, it's using Home Assistant and writing code and integrations and making hardware that talks to the heat pump, which you can't. I've got a Samsung heat pump. You can't buy something that will do it off the shelf. Though there are really good controls out there. If you're not into it as I am, you can. Havenwise and Homely both do a really good job, but not to the same level. You can't manage the energy in the same way that they kind of look after themselves, and they'll integrate with Agile for Octopus and minimize your running costs that way. And they do a really good job at that. But if you're then putting that on top of what we've got with vehicle to grid, which is an unusual thing, but it can make a big difference, battery storage and your solar, you end up with things fighting each other if you don't have an overall control of them. And that's where we've had to do what we've done. And the Samsung I built a little interface that talks to the Samsung unit. and I can control it much the same way that Homely does. I can control the flow temperatures and the mode, trigger a hot water cycle, and turn it off if I need to. Most of the time, I just leave it alone. Once it's set up, you leave it and run it, and it just runs itself.
So is anything happening on the vehicle to grid or vehicle to home front that we can start getting a little bit more excited about? Because it still seems to me like it's lagging. I'm not a big expert in the field.
You've got to remember that CHAdeMO, which is what the first trials were based on, has been around for over a decade. So the standards for bidirectional charging have been around for a long time, whereas CCS, which is the current Betamax, if you like, charging standard, only got its bidirectional standard officially written 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. So it's a long way behind. And then you've got the hurdles of car manufacturers allowing it and allowing it alongside the original warranties, because a lot of them are a bit nervous of battery degradation as a result of vehicle to grid, which it's a valid point. They've got to put a warranty on a car. Ultimately, it's out their pocket if you wear that battery out, not by driving it as a car. So far, all the trials actually show it to have, in most cases, a benefit rather than a negative effect, because it stops batteries sitting at high percentages of charge, which is what damages them the most.
I want my car to be available to drive. I mean, it's great. I'd have another 100 kilowatts to export. That'd be helpful. I don't want to tinker with stuff like I've got one of the guys that works for me spends hours tinkering with Home Assistant, getting the washing machine to come on when the sun comes out, and oh God, I mean, some people have too much time on their hands. I could not spare the time. I've got a home automation system for my cinema that I bought 5 years ago. I haven't had time to configure that yet, and it annoys the hell out of me that I have to press the back button on my Apple TV remote control just because I've forgotten to code it.
The people on this podcast are a certain sort of group of people, and they're not 95% of homeowners aren't that group of people. So you've got to think about how are they going to benefit from all this solar in the summer, and you've got to look at ready-made solutions, sort of like hot water diversion, like your My Energy Eddy or Solar Eye Boost, things that will just work and they won't have to touch them. It's a small investment. They're not expensive products, and if you've got a lot of surplus solar, you could have in free hot water for 6 months of the year, if you don't want to export it. So I think looking at the off-the-shelf products for 95% of homeowners is probably the better way to go.
You mentioned there about solar diverters. You've got a heat pump. So do you still use a solar diverter with a heat pump?
No, a solar diverter is 1-to-1. So 1 kilowatt of energy from your solar, 1 kilowatt hour into your solar diverter, it's just 1-to-1. If you do your hot water with a heat pump, you can get 1 kilowatt hour in, 3 to 4 kilowatt hours into your heat pump. So it's better off storing it in the battery and then doing your hot water run with the heat pump, and then sending the spare to the grid.
If I use the heat pump for hot water, it's 3.95 pence per kilowatt hour. If I use direct electric, it's 7.9 pence per kilowatt hour. If I use gas, it's 8.74. I haven't got gas, but that's what it would be. And that's using the average import rate from my Octopus Intelligent. So I've never used the diverter.
But then the math spreadsheet comes out, Paul, and you say, well, I could, if you don't have a heat pump, and then you're better off doing it overnight at 7p on Octopus and then selling back at 15. It's sort of, so there's all these things, but hopefully if you buy a reasonable piece of kit like a My Energy Eddy, it can make some of these decisions for you.
Things like the Eddy, you can use for a towel rail. So if you've got it, rather than firing up a boiler or a heat pump, just if you've got a particularly chilly bathroom and you want the bathroom a bit warmer, use the My Energy for warming a towel rail up.
And then obviously you go from hot water diversion, then you can go to EV diversion, and you've got any surplus solar, you can send that to the car. But then it comes down to the financials again. Are you better off charging your car overnight if you're on a 7p tariff than selling it back at 15? There's no point putting it in your car when you can get 15p for it. As we said right at the beginning, what kit you've got, what tariffs you've got available to you, and then what's going to be and then are you financially driven or are you self-consumption green driven? Some people aren't that bothered about the money. 99% of people are, but there are those green guys and girls who really want to self-consume everything that they generate. Fair play to them.
But from a green point of view, they're actually better off exporting when the grid's dirty. So if they save it up and chuck it back out to the grid during the high demand and high carbon periods, like 4 till 7, which is what you're incentivized for with the variable export tariffs. But it is different motivations for different people. Not everyone's the same. But like you said, most people are motivated by running costs or investment costs.
I've been running my website for God knows how many years. The amount of people that said they like, I've got green credentials, and our tariff changes and the rates change and in away from their favour. Like, what's the cheapest tariff now? Like, okay.
Are you new to heat pumps and feeding lost? Then From Zero to Heat Pump Hero helps you understand, operate, and optimize your system. No jargon, just simple practical advice from one homeowner to another. Take control of your heating and save energy. Get your copy now. Link in the description. Ash, Mick actually said something quite interesting, is that 95% of people are not like the people that are actually on this call. So when you guys go and install a system for them, so whether that is solar PV coupled with a battery, how much do you actually guide them in terms of trying to automate that as much as possible? Because I don't think a lot of people actually want to think, or they certainly don't have the time to do it. How easy is it to A, set it up, and B, if they actually do want to change their own settings, is it quite seamless?
I mean, anything's easy when you know how to do it and you're doing it daily. So the installers that we have can make it look particularly easy, but they definitely spend the time with each customer depending on how long they need, of where they can find the buttons to select the force charging or the cheaper power. And again, it all comes back to the education side of it. So of looking at your monitoring app, seeing if your battery's full, seeing if it's the height of summer and your system's overproducing. So at that point, you don't need to be buying power from the grid. I think one thing that we need to take away from this conversation is to make it simple as possible for these customers that are buying it. Give them a kind of as less things to do to save the most money. I think automation will come into that in the very, very near future.
Lawrence, Mick mentioned kind of trying to maybe get the best possible brand battery for your property. So, you just simplified those processes. So maybe like a Powerwall or Give Energy or a Solar Edge. The last time you were on the show, we spoke about BMW. Has that come out yet?
Yes, Solarwatt Vision is the actual name of the battery. It's 7.8 to 18.8 kilowatts, I believe, if I remember correctly, in modular 2.6 kilowatt hour chunks. And that has that kind of intelligence built in, that it understands the tariffs and stuff. And actually, I don't think we will ever install a dumb battery anywhere. I've got some fantastic use cases. I've got use cases where export is constrained and we're making the battery export, or rather the system is making the battery export from 5 o'clock in the morning and basically utilizing that time period. I mean, and this is for my mum. If you're going to do a decent system, you've got to do it for your mum. At the moment, she's up about £7 a day, but different people have different use cases. I met some customers on Monday evening, and exactly what Mick was just saying. They're like, we don't want to have to be bothered with it. And she said, so my sister-in-law told me that I need to put the washing machine on when the sun's out. I'm like, no, forget that, because that is not what we design systems so you get the lowest cost energy no matter what you do, right? You can use energy whenever you want. You should not be constrained, and the system takes care of it all for you.
Do you think, Lawrence and Ash, that there's going to be a big push in the future to buy into an ecosystem of kit, so that the charger, the EV charger, the battery, the inverter, all these things are all from the same brand and they can all talk to each other? Because as Paul and I know from home system point of view, trying to get things to talk to each other from different brands and different on like an interoperability point of view is awful. And us as early adopters are having this pain of, I've got a Lux battery and a Zappy charger and everything's all over the place. Whereas if you now buy into like a Give Energy ecosystem and they do an inverter, a battery, an EV charger, and they do the all-in-one with the off-grid stuff, you're like, Well, that should be a lot easier. And I think lots of manufacturers are going to go down that route of trying to get you into their ecosystem so that it makes your life a lot easier.
That is it actually what's happening. So obviously Tesla we use a lot that already has its own charger, and with the Powerwall 3 you've got an integrated solar inverter as well. The Solarwatt Vision, the BMW battery as we call it on this channel, that actually integrates with the Stiebel Eltron heat pump. So that ecosystem has already been created, and Solarwatt have their own range of charging. So that is currently what's happening, and actually probably that is going to continue to happen, because I don't see any international interoperability smart grid standard coming anytime. I mean, let's be honest, we've still got 3-pin plugs here and 2 pins in America, and so, like if we can't even decide on what plug type we're going to have globally, we ain't going to have an interoperability standard between devices. That's just never going to happen.
The way that we do it at Egg is the inverter brand and the battery brand are the same, to make sure that they can talk to each other, not just now but well into the future. I think, just kind of answering your point before, I think money will take over, as it does in most instances, and some of these bigger brands that have got the buying power, they've got the money, can, if they want, pump the money into it and essentially take over, and maybe even scared people into thinking that this is the only way that you can do it.
When we talk about regrets again, I regret having devices from lots of different manufacturers. I wish I'd have bought into an ecosystem. So from a homeowner's point of view, the advice would be, if you can, buy into an ecosystem. Number one complaint on Energy Twitter is, my EV charger is discharging my battery. Your EV charger says I need energy, and your battery says, oh, you need energy, and just sends it to the car. So having an ecosystem where all the devices talk to each other just takes all that pain away.
I think a lot's changed, hasn't it? Since you were quite an early adopter, and as was I, and you couldn't buy a single ecosystem when I first started doing all this, but now you can. You can choose to do that, and I would say from exactly what you just mentioned, the cross-charging problems, a single ecosystem answers so many problems. The only missing loop in a lot of cases is the heat pump integration, which hopefully will change. And
having had a heat pump, I'm less bothered about automating the heat pump and maybe the hot water runs, but the general running, I don't buy into this heat your house up at 3 till 4 and make it toasty warm and then don't use it at 4 till 7. My wife would kill me if we'd started doing that. The reason why you get a heat pump is half of it is the comfort level. You want that 20 degrees all the time. You don't want fluctuations in temperature like you did when you had your gas boiler. But maybe that's a podcast for another day.
People don't know that heat pumps work wonderfully 24/7.
I'm going to tweet that now. Mick Wall says heat pumps work 24/7 wonderfully.
Yes, if you want ultimate comfort, buy a heat pump. And guess what? If you've got solar and batteries, you might even save money.
Going back then, Laurence, this early adopter to renewable journey is one of the main drivers around me getting a heat pump was me seeing the amount I was sending back to the grid, exporting, thinking what device next will allow me to use that self-generation. It's like, well, I'm paying for gas and I've got a battery and a solar. Well, a heat pump's just like a no-brainer. Like Paul's heard me say this before many times, like solar's the biggest gateway drug in the world to everything else. All of a sudden you become more aware of what's a kilowatt hour? How many of them have I generated? And then you see it in your app and you're like, why am I sending all this back to the grid? And cogs start turning. Well, it did for me anyway.
I totally agree with you, Mick. I mean, we installed a 4 kilowatt system on my house in 2012. And that was when the feed-in tariff was still quite lucrative. But every 2 or 3 years I've added. So I went from 4 to 7 to 11 to 18 to hopefully 25, which will be quite nice. And 2017, I put my first Powerwall on. 2019, the second one went on. 2022, the third one went on. And last year, the fourth one went on. Actually, I've got a funny story for you. I had a huge row with our Tesla account manager because in 2016, I bought a Model S and I put the Powerwall in 2017. And I'm like, I've bought a car and the battery from the same manufacturer, but your system doesn't know that I've plugged my bloody car in. What? Your Tesla, for God's sake. I tell you, the other thing I railed at them about in 2018 is, what do you mean you can't forecast what my solar's going to do the next day and then fill my battery up? I had to wait until 2022, 2023 for that functionality to actually appear. But it is actually coming. But you're right. As early adopters, we've been absolutely battered. I've got a Zappy here. I've got an Eddy here. I mean, I don't use either of them now, to be quite honest, because I just charging cars overnight is the best possible use case, right? But then that opens up another question, that when we sold enough cars, is peak rate going to be 11:30 at night until 5:30 in the morning?
That goes back to the choices of kit and being able to adapt to these tariff and changes in the future. Because who's to say that the 15p, if the 15p was to disappear this summer and drop back down to its original smart export guarantee of 4p, then are you better off diverting your surplus solar to the car rather than getting 4p for it? So having kit that can adapt to these things in the future and the ecosystem, I think for homeowners is definitely, you've got to buy the smart kit, the ecosystem, to give you the most seamless way of you best using your energy and make it for the cheapest.
Whether I'm on outgoing fixed or outgoing agile, I want the system to take care of all that stuff for me. I don't even want to think about it. In fact, probably the best thing I ever do is look at my Octopus watch app every day, and it tells me, "Oh, you got paid £9 yesterday. Oh, good. Thank you very much. I can afford to go to the pub today."
This is one of the biggest concerns we get from homeowners when they ask us about batteries is battery degradation over time. Is it a genuine concern?
I think if the battery's used effectively and charge and discharge it, most come with like a 6,000 charge cycle now, or around about a 10-year warranty. So I think used correctly and used with the right monitoring kit to see when it's charging and discharging, you can really maximise it longer than the actual warranty period that's on it.
I mean, to be honest, in the summer, it only really does a couple of hours of duration when there's not much load on. So it will charge up overnight. And then when the cheap period kicks off at 5:30 in the morning, it will run the house till the sun is producing enough to top it back up again. Then it'll top back up and it'll stay where it is. So it spends most of its life in the summer, sort of between 100 and maybe 80%, 75, 80%.
I think the winter is the heavier time for a battery, because you'll be filling it either overnight or with a bit of solar, and then especially if you've got a heat pump, you'll be absolutely discharging it by tea time, and then you'll have to. It's like in the winter it's more fill, empty, whereas Paul says in summer, if you fill it overnight, you barely have to discharge it during the day because you're going to run on solar and you'll be exporting.
Yeah, the winter savings for a battery or the winter use of a battery is much greater than the summer.
Owning a heat pump, I know that unless you've got a system like Lawrence's, there will always be days where you'll have to import. Even I've got 16 kilowatt hours of battery, so I've got a reasonable setup. But even in the winter, I know when it's cold, the heat pump needs more energy, and I will be importing on some days. So how do you go about advising a customer on battery size?
I mean, one of the better ways to look at it is not necessarily oversizing, but take somebody's full usage. Let's say it's 10,000 kilowatt hours for that year. If the solar system was going to produce, our best case scenario, let's say 4,000, there's still that additional 6,000 units that the customer's going to have to buy from the grid. So it's trying to size a battery that could allow them to buy as many, if not all of them, additional 6,000 at cheaper rates. So making sure you're sizing the battery that way for them, especially if that's something that they're going to be looking at. If not, it'll be what's kind of going to be left over from the solar system and what can fill it that way.
In the summer, you don't need very much storage at all because the days are so long and the solar energy we get is huge. So I've got several metrics that I use. I would typically look at what a person's annual consumption is and size the system to be about 75% of that. So if you say 10 megawatts was the target, I'd be probably saying that we'd install something like a 7.5 kilowatt peak system, which would generate in the south of England, south facing, about 7.5 megawatts a year. So you get 3/4 of it from solar. And then typically what I would normally say is I'd put a Powerwall in for every 5 to 7 kilowatts peak. If I put, say, 7.5 kilowatts peak, that's probably a single Powerwall for that particular thing. But that single Powerwall would do probably 80% of the year, no problem. But for the 4 months where those of us with a heat pump and everything else really, where we really need a lot of storage, so November, December, January, February, I would probably say to the customer, when you can afford it, would probably want another Powerwall in just to cover those winter months. So, but it's a journey. I mean, the thing is, this equipment is not cheap. I think I was saying the other day, I've spent in a region of £65,000 on all of this technology. But what it means is that instead of my electric bill being like £11,000 a year, I'm getting credited about 1,500 quid. You wouldn't have to be a rocket scientist to say, why wouldn't you do that? If you're in your forever home, I mean, most of the time I'm talking to like retire or people that are sort of thinking about retirement. And I met a chap the other day, his electric bill's 25 grand a year. I'm like, man, just stick a ground mount over there. You'll get your money back in 4 years.
But there is a balance, like you said, Lawrence, going for that second Powerwall at another 8 grand compared to importing a bit of energy, sort of for 3 months of the year. It's sort of
No, but it's not though, Mick. It's not like the first one's 8 grand. The second one's only 6, that with the Powerwall 2,
right, because
right?
the
Got the
gateway's
add-on.
already in and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But with the Powerwall 3, the first one's like 8 grand and the second one's 5,250. So actually, and
Yeah.
the thing is, if you can get paid 15 pence a kilowatt for it and you can fill it at 7, then actually, really, you're probably looking at a 6-year return on investment case on adding a Powerwall. That's not bad for a product that's warranted for 10 years. And actually, as what always happens, in 3 years' time, energy will be 45p. And you'll be sitting there going, oh, God, I've already broke even. I didn't even think I was going to.
The difference between the most expensive time and the cheapest time is going to get wider. So having the batteries and being able to store that cheaper energy and get you through the more expensive time is where it's going to be at, really. And I know Paul's got his vehicle to grid, and he's got a massive way of being able to store lots of cheap energy and get over lots of expensive times.
The last winter, we hardly used the vehicle to grid because switching to intelligent, you get those ad hoc daytime cheap. Right, my wife's on maternity leave, so we drop the kids off at nursery, plug the car in, you get a cheap slot for a few hours, top the battery up, and then battery gets used, and same might happen in the afternoon. And that for the last winter has been a game changer for us. So having access to an EV tariff like intelligent, to such an extent, I actually changed our perfectly good charger for one that works with intelligent, and it paid for itself in months. When you're a high consumer with a heat pump and you've got a battery, having those slots during the day on a long winter's day when the solar's doing nothing has made a huge difference to us. It saved us well over £1,000 last winter.
So we're saying the same thing again. Make sure you get the kit that's smart enough to talk to these smart tariffs and let those things do the hard work for you.
If you've got any questions about heat pumps, then you need to join the Renewable Heating Hub forums. You can connect with other homeowners, share experiences, and get advice on heat pumps and renewables. Sign up today and be a part of the conversation. Link in the description. So that's a wrap for today's episode. A massive thank you to Ash, Paul, Mick, and Lawrence for sharing their expertise. And a quick shout out once again to our sponsor, Egg, who's on a mission to crack clean energy wide open. Check them out at egg.com. If you've got any burning questions, please drop them in the comments below. Until next time, stay warm, stay green, stay tuned. Goodbye.